record. So welcome everyone to the September 2017 Central East Regional Presidents and Leaders Roundtable meeting. My name is David Pyle, and I am your congregation, your UUA staff, Central East Regional Program Manager for Governance, and what that means is that I am the person who works with all of our congregations, 198 congregations of the region, on issues of governance and bylaws and committee structure and program and how to make decisions and leadership and all of those areas. We have at least one other Central East Regional staff member on the call with us. We'll be doing introductions about that in a few minutes, just so you know that's coming. Hope for you to be able to share. But it's great to be with you all today, and I'm glad you've joined us. But for those of you who are on video, can you wave your hands if you've never been on this call before? Wave your hands. That's a big thing for the fall. It's, you know, we Unitary Universalists like to change leaders a lot, and it's great that you're joining us and being part of this call. But before we're going to go ahead and get started. Can you all see the screen? Wave hands if you can see the screen. All right, good. So I'm going to start off with a chalice lighting reading. And the one I've chosen, I like to pick chalice lightings out of the hymnal because I think that we often miss what is in there. And I've chosen this one. It's number 560. It's entitled Commitment. People say, what is the sense in our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples and spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. Dorothy Day. So welcome, and I want to celebrate the joy that Norrie is on the call with us. Yay! So yay! Hi, Norrie. So the purpose of our call today is this: we do this call once a month on the fourth Thursday of every month. And remember, as you come in, if you could please mute, either mute by muting if you're on a phone, hitting the mute button, or on your screen. If you scroll across your screen with the mouse, you should see a little microphone pop up that you can mute. Thank you. So the purpose of this call that we have once a month is to provide a regularly scheduled opportunity for congregational leaders to connect with your UUA Central East Regional staff, and to introduce both regional staff and also national staff members to you. And it's to share a few good ideas monthly with all congregational presidents and other leadership. And we define leadership really broadly. It's, you know, however you define leadership in your congregation. Anyone is really welcome to attend these calls. This grew out of an effort in some of our areas, some of parts of our region, where there was an annual in-person President's Roundtable meeting. And that's easier to do in a district than it is to do in a region. But the idea for this came from transitioning that annual idea to a monthly idea. So the fourth Thursday of every month, usually in this Zoom meeting room, but in some others, depending on if there's another host, we will have an opportunity for you all to come together, to share with each other, to hear a few good ideas. And it's because we want to build community between the leaders and the congregations of the Central East region of the UUA. And it's for us also to hear directly from you as congregations what's important to you, and aid in developing programming and capacity building training. So that's the purpose of this call that we have once a month. So our agenda today, the chalice lighting and welcoming, the purpose of this call, introducing our featured UUA staff, which today is Norrie Gall, introducing other UUA staff that are on the call with us, changes and updates in which we're going to focus, the program is on the changes and updates in the annual program fund. And then we're going to hear from you. So this is where you get to know the part where we're going to ask you all to have a conversation with each other and us. And the topic today is really, what are the ways your congregation is in relationship with other Unitarian Universalist congregations? So you can begin thinking about that. What ways are you in relationship with other UU congregations? And how has that been for you? How has that changed? How does that help you live your mission? So there's your preparing for the homework assignment. and then we'll do a few closing words. So that's the agenda for our time together today. Before we get started, though, I'm going to take us off screen share for a second to do a little tradition we do, and that is to kind of have people unmute as you can, and I'm going to call off states. If we went by and called out all the congregations that are on this call and named and leaders and positions, that would be the next hour and a half. So instead, we're going to do this by states. So when I call your state, if you can like make noise and wave your arms and yell for your state, and we'll see who's here. You ready? All right. So Virginia.
Hey.
We have one person. Paul, you're representing the entire state of Virginia, right? So that's good. Good job.
Virginia, yay!
Yeah, there's a couple more Virginia people, and that's Northern Virginia area. In the area around D.C. is part of our region. How about Maryland?
Yeah.
Yes.
Lots of Maryland. Yes. Anybody from Washington D.C.?
Yay!
No. Yay! We have somebody from Washington D.C. Hallelujah. All right. How about somebody from Delaware?
Yay!
Yeah, see,
Delaware.
from Delaware. Yep. See, and I can go because I'm in Delaware. At the moment. How about Pennsylvania?
Yay!
Yeah, got a few people from Pennsylvania. Yep. How about New Jersey? New Jersey never comes to this call. All right, I have to do my best with that. So, New York.
Yay!
Yep. We got some people from New York. How about Ohio?
Yay!
Yeah, it's basically the eastern half of Ohio that's part of our region. Here's the one that's a struggle. Anybody from West Virginia?
Yes, we're here.
Hallelujah. All right, we got somebody from West Virginia. How about Connecticut? No. Well, there's only a few congregations that are part of our region from Connecticut. So
I have family in Connecticut. Does that count?
it can count just fine, Keith. It's perfectly acceptable. You can represent Connecticut for us today. So thank you all for doing that with me. That's just one is just a way to see who's here, but also to really be able to see the breadth of our region, which goes from Northern Virginia to the New York-Canadian border, from the Atlantic Ocean to halfway through Ohio, and to see that 198 congregations is the congregations you're in community with. So if you could mute again, please, everyone, please. If you could, this is a practice to remember how to mute and unmute. And I'm going to share screen again. Take me just a second. Oh, and there we go. So we are going to do a little bit of catching up. So I wanted to take a moment to introduce the members of our Central East Regional staff that are on the call. I will go first, and then I think we have Hope. I don't know that we have anybody else today. We'll see. So my name is David Pyle. People sometimes call me Reverend David Pyle, most often when they want something. You can laugh at that. It's okay. I am your governance program manager for the region. I am the primary contact, so I am the first call for the congregations of the greater Baltimore area, of the central Pennsylvania cluster, and of the Delmarva Peninsula cluster. So kind of a line between Salisbury, Maryland, and State College, Pennsylvania, in a diagonal. I also am the regional program manager for our adjunct consultant program, where lay leaders and others like yourself provide services to congregations on a fee-for-service basis. I am the Arts of Ministry program manager, so that's worship and pastoral care and committees on ministry. I am also our specialist in helping congregations come back from professional staff misconduct. And I'm a member of our large church team. And I live in Pike Creek, Delaware. And the other thing is that I'm also an Army Reserve chaplain based out of Fort Dix, New Jersey. So with that, Hope, would you be willing to share a little about your role and where you are?
Sure. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I serve as congregational life consultant for the Central East region, of course. My areas of specialization are conflict transformation, and my approach to it is let's try to avoid the big brouhaha conflict by paying attention to what's going on. And that's my primary area of expertise. And I also am very engaged in cross-cultural engagement. So lately I've been doing things like looking at, well, should we put up a Black Lives Matter banner or not? What does this mean? What are some of the issues we need to pay attention to as we move forward, particularly in this new climate, where the subject of race is on the front line right now.
Yep.
In addition to that, my work with the region, I also serve as minister of our congregation in Garden City, Long Island, New York. And it is a joy to be on this call with one of my favorite colleagues. Well, thank you.
And just to say, Hope is a member of our staff who is half-time with the UUA. So we are grateful for, and frankly, I think she sometimes works more than half-time when working for congregations. But that half her time is with the Central East Regional staff, and the other half is serving as the minister for our congregation in Garden City. And you're the primary contact for all of our congregations on Long Island, right? She's muted, but I think that's yes. So, so do we have any other Central East Regional staff members on the call? I didn't think we did, but so now I'd like to take us off screen share for a second, and before I do that, to move us over and introduce our featured UUA staff member for the day, so that everybody can meet her, Norrie Gall. Norrie, could you tell us a little bit about you, and we'll get to your presentation in a few minutes. This isn't the time for that, but just tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, Operation Green Screen isn't working. I was going to transport you from my basement somewhere else, but I'm Norrie Gall. I'm the Congregational Giving Manager at the UUA. I just hit my 5-year anniversary with the association. And I work in the Boston office and from home. I live about, I live 25 miles north of Boston. It's really dependent on how far from Boston I live, based on traffic. And I am on the North Shore. My congregation turned 350 years old this week, so that was kind of cool. So I'm claiming for this week that I'm from First Parish. The First Parish, but and let's see, I'm also a mother to a 7-year-old who's behaving very well right now, but if at some point I do an abrupt movement, it might be to redirect a question. So that's a little about me. I'm delighted to be here. I got to talk with a lot of you in the spring about the changes that happened for this year with the Central East region and the annual program fund ask. So I'm delighted to be back, and I'm really pleased with the results I'm seeing from the good attention paid in your region. So.
And you're going to tell us all about that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Norrie's going to do our presentation in just a few minutes. Thank you, Norrie. Before we do that, though, we're going to go ahead and come back together and just do a couple of things that we often do at the beginning of these calls. The first one really is to talk a little bit about how you can know a little more about what's happening in the Central East region. So hang with me. This is the ad. We'll get to the fun part of the presentation in a few minutes. But I usually at the first one of these meetings every year want to talk people through how to access, to know what programs are available, to know what might be coming up. So we do have a wonderful website that we have been doing a lot of work on, and we're adding new resources to over the summer and this fall. So to pay attention to it, this is what the website looks like, but I'm going to take us to it. Usually I just talk about it a little bit, but the first one of these meetings of the fall, I like to take us to this website. So let me bring it up just so you can see how. Well, where did it go? There it is. So the And there it is. All right. So this is the Central East Regional website, and you can find it at uua.org/central-east, or you can even put uua.org/CER, or you can go to any uua.org page and type Central East into the box, and it will come up. And what this has is a couple things that I wanted to highlight to you all. The first one, and probably the most important, one of the questions that I get all the time is, well, I heard that there's an event happening, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to get to it. Or I got an email about it, or I saw it on social media. Because we do have a wonderful consultant who publicizes all of our programming and events, Beth Casebold, our communications consultant. But you can always come here to UUA.org and click on the events and webinars block, and it'll take you to a calendar. Now the calendar has lots of has the events. There is not a way to look at which ones are directly in your area, but a lot of the events are online, such as we just had this past month, the final session of a 3-part Board Basics webinar series. If you've been in that one, you could, if you click on any event, it comes up with all the information that you need to attend the meeting, but also even to register for it. The same thing is true for in-person events. I know that I just did one this past weekend that was a lay pastoral care training in Washington, D.C. And if you click on that, it brings up the opportunity for you to register and all the information about that event. So I'm just saying, we get questions all the time about how to access events, and you can go to the UUA website at any time to be able to see what events are upcoming. We also send them out through social media, and we also have registered based upon people that have filled out their congregation's myuua.org page with their leadership changes this year, which we're going to encourage you to do if you haven't done. If you're not familiar with myuua.org, just go to uua.org and put in myuua. And each congregation has a page of data about that if you keep updated, that lets us be better in communication with you. So one of the things we've done is added presidents and some of the leadership positions to some of the public notification pages based upon what your congregation has registered. That's the online calendar, but I also wanted to name 2 other resources. The first one here is the resource pages. Now, this is part of what we're building right now over the summer and fall. We're building a whole new set of general resource pages for almost all areas of congregational life. And so I'm going to invite you to pay attention to this block right here over the next couple months as new resource pages come up. And we have a whole program on different programs of the Central East region, including the one I'm going to highlight, which I like to highlight every fall, is the UU Leadership Institute. Now, has anyone on this call, wave your hands, taken any classes at the UU Leadership Institute? This is our online seminary for lay leaders like yourself. It is a school. It functions just like a school with semesters, and where you can take a class, but it functions in a flipped classroom model, where instead of you spending $1,000+ to travel somewhere for a week, you can take the classes online. You watch a module or 2, and then you have an online seminar discussion with the course instructor. And then watch a module or 2 in your own time, and then have an online seminar discussion with the course instructor and other people that are taking the course. Once you can get to it at uuinstitute.org, or you can go through the Central East Regional website. Some of the fall 27 courses, the ones that have just started, and I think you might still be able to get into. The Faithful Membership class is a great one. We have our Healthy Leadership 101, which is a class that we teach every semester. And has anyone on this call ever taken Healthy Congregations? It's the Healthy Congregations course material, but done specifically from a UU perspective. Strategic Leadership, Leading Adaptively, those are both great courses. Compassionate Communication, The Death of Sunday School, From Visitor to Member. And don't get scared about the Death of Sunday School. You can learn a little more about that. It's one of our premium courses. From visitor to member, smaller congregations, spiritual companioning for congregations, and transgender inclusion are some of the course titles for this fall. There'll be a whole new set of course titles that come out for the spring and also for the summer. So just to know, this is our primary leadership development tool that we as your region offer to congregations. And you can take these together, either individually or together, and the cost is far less. For most courses, the cost is $30 per registration. And if, for those who are interested in the Commissioned Lay Ministry Program, which we'll talk about next month a little bit, this coursework is in large part some of the training that's required for people that are participating in the Central East Region's Commissioned Lay Ministry Program. So I'm going to stop there and say I could go on. I think we know that I have the ability to go on. And just bring us back together to say, just be aware of knowing that that resource is there. And if you have questions, of course, as always, find your primary contact. Now, is there anyone on this call who does not know who their primary contact is? Raise your hand if you don't know who your UUA staff primary contact is. Hallelujah. I can't tell you what a great difference that is. I'm so glad that you all know. How many of you all am I your primary contact? There's quite a few of you. Yeah. So I see Carrie has raised her hand. Carrie? Oh, that I'm your primary contact. So if there is someone who could mute, that would be great. Okay. So with that, I'm going to take us off share screen, and I'm going to invite Norrie Gall to take it away with our featured presentation today. Norrie?
All right.
We're having some feedback from Carla and Lori, I think. I'm going to mute you if that's all right. There we go. All right, go ahead. Norrie?
I'm hoping.
Go ahead, Norrie.
So I'm hoping that I can share screen now.
You should be able to.
Okay, all right.
If not, I will make you a host, and you definitely will be able to. You are now the host.
Okay, let me Okay, so I'm going to ask you to flag for me if there are questions.
I will do that, and I will watch the chat box. So for anyone who has questions, if you could type them in the chat box. You can see the chat box is at the bottom of your screen. Little button that says chat. It'll bring it up. So if you have questions, feel free to type it there, and I will ask them of Norrie.
And I just want to confirm you guys can see the full screen and not my...
We are seeing your PowerPoint editor slide.
Okay.
So if you hit the share, if you hit the
Sorry, everyone. There we go. All right. Does that look a little better? A little more official? Okay.
Yes, now you got it.
Okay. So I'm going to, I'll tell you, first of all, this presentation is one that's going to walk us through what changes are coming to the annual program fund in the Central East region. As a good many of you know, hopefully everybody, this year we moved to a format where congregations were asked to make one pledge that was based on their historical district ask and the annual program fund request. So for three of the four districts, those are all per member. For St. Lawrence, it was the St. Lawrence ask was calculated based on percentage of expenditures. So that's reflected, that was reflected in their ask for congregations historically in that district. And then large congregations, which the UUA defines as those congregations having 550 or more members, have the option to contribute either by number of members or percentage of 4.3% of their operating expenditures. And so that I just note that for two reasons. One, your region is one of the only ones besides the southern region that has anybody participating in a percentage ask at the what was the district level. So it's really interesting. So we moved this year to doing one ask. What we will be doing moving forward, and I'm going to walk us through this. I will invite questions, and then I will also tell you that this is my first time presenting this. So I'm appreciative of feedback. If that's okay, I'm a big fan of the statement that if it's perfect in the first iteration, then you haven't done it right. And
I will also say that we asked Norrie if she would come as soon as possible to talk about this with our congregations. So our being the test case for presenting this is because we were asking and begging. So go ahead.
Yep. There will actually be, just so you know, mailing coming out in mid-October to your congregation echoing this. So I'm going to flag that for you now, walk you through it, answer what I can, and take back what I can't so that I can get better insight and respond. So this was prepared for our Generosity Network, which is a group of volunteers that connect with our, based in each region, who are tasked with building connection between our congregations and the UUA, and kind of highlighting how the annual program fund is a primary mechanism for congregations to support one another. So I'll do a quick, what is the annual program fund? Well, and I'm going to call it APF now. Why does APF matter? Why is it being changed? How will it, and how will it be implemented? I can go over what is your role, but don't worry about that. I probably won't. So first of all, what is the annual program fund? Hopefully this is a little remedial, but the annual program fund is the largest single source of funding for our UUA. 56, almost 57% of all donations made to the UUA are made via the annual program fund. All congregations pledged financial support to the UUA when becoming members of the association, and that's codified in the bylaws. All congregations commit as member congregations to providing annual financial support of the association. And the annual program fund, the UUA-CER ask for your region this year is that mechanism. As I said, the support of the APF is really fulfillment of a promise that has already been made. And that happened when your congregation joined the association. So how does the APF work? I touched briefly on how it's working for your region this year. Historically, for a very long time, the APF asked congregations to contribute a per member amount based on reported membership. And that's the membership number that you report during the annual certification process. We ask you to tell us the number of voting members you have, and that is what we use as a basis. I'm going to flag that we don't tell you what makes a voting member in your congregation. That is something that is determined by your congregation, typically found in your bylaws. So however that is defined is what we're asking you. We're not providing that definition. Under APF, large congregations have been able to contribute either per member or a percentage of certified operating expenditures. I don't know if everybody's sitting, but I've yet to see a congregation give the higher of those two figures. And I can understand why when we look at some of our congregations that have really, all of this is going to be excluding Shelter Rock, in case anybody's wondering how the data gets thrown off by a congregation with very different resources. But
not everybody is aware that our congregation at Shelter Rock has a very large endowment that they graciously make available to programs of the UUA. So Just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, they fund millions of dollars in grants each year to congregations, and to the association. So if their expenditures were included, I include both figures in their ask, but it's dramatically different. In the past, districts and regions manage their own requests for support at the local level. As we've been going through regionalization nationally, that's moved. In your region, with the exception of the Metro New York district, for my tenure, I'll say, before I started, congregations received a pledge form from the UUA that had both the district of the APF amount requested and the district amount requested, and you would send your pledge back. And then I would fax back in the day, or and now email that document back to the district administrator so that they could see that. That's a little different. You only had one district that wasn't participating in that model. In New England, we moved to the combined ask like you have last year, or like you have now last year, and all but one of their districts never asked for a pledge. And that plays out differently across the country. So pledge request amounts are vastly different for district support, which is now regional support in many places, including your region. There's a lot problematic about having vastly different ways of calculating requests and funding staff, and a perception for a long time the annual program fund request amount was called the fair share. And there is a very, I'll editorialize and say, natural pushback that fair was a little not exactly the case for everybody. Depending on where you live, $60 per member can mean a lot more in one place or another, or member congregation size. And so there's been a long history of trying to look at that and address it in a more helpful way. In 2004, we started a pilot with congregations in the southern region. At that time, the staff, so when we started this in 2004, we asked congregations to contribute 7% of their operating expenditures, which we called the GIFT program, which stands for Generously Investing for Tomorrow. I like to think of it as generously investing for today, because it is actually the work that we're doing today with those funds. But that was a flat rate. So whatever you told us for your operating expenditures, and I'll get into that a little bit, we asked 7% with no allowances for the fact that it's a lot more expensive to live in Houston than it is to live in Camp Hill, Alabama. We learned a lot. It also happened exactly, so 2013, the fiscal year closed, staff regionalized. At that exact same time, we changed how we asked for money. We combined the district support and the APF support, and we sent congregations a very confusing new request that appeared to double their APF ask. So that was a very good learning experience.
And I'm going to invite people again to remember to mute if you can. We can hear someone typing, so I'm... Go ahead.
That's okay. So that was known as the GIFT program. You may notice that your staff is already pretty much regionalized. So one of the ways that we've worked on mitigating some of the challenges from the GIFT program was really looking at what was successful, what was the implementation, and what was not. So this is, this just talks about the fact that why APF matters from and my colleague Vale Weller, Reverend Vale Weller, you may have heard her talk before about the role of the annual program fund in really lifting up the covenant between our congregations. But, we are based in congregational polity, the Cambridge platform. is a document from 1649 that outlined the cooperation among churches that we use. Our congregations are independently governed, but we are also interdependent. And one of the things of having a separate district or regional request and support for the UUA request is that it makes it harder to show that we are actually one united group. Oh, there's the Cambridge platform. A little bit. As I said earlier, the annual program fund and district and regional contributions they're the expression of the Cambridge platform, which, way back when would be your minister's sick, maybe David could ride over from the next town and perform a funeral or something to that effect. How can you support one another in that way? It's not necessarily the same today. But again, the resources that are provided by the UUA and by the region are the manifestation of that support. We do call congregations who contribute the full requested amount to the association honor congregations. In the past, people may say, "Oh, well, we're a fair share congregation. We're not an honor congregation." That they were interchangeable. As we've stepped away from fair share, we use the word honor to recognize those that have contributed fully. It's just a little bit about why APF matters. I mentioned what percentage of giving the annual program fund represents. 76% of the UUA budget is spent on programming to serve our congregations. And the vast majority of that funding comes from the annual program fund. This is 2016. We will have the 2017 annual report up, and I expect to have an updated version of this graphic. So now, why are we looking at a new APF? This is a long time coming. I found a document this past spring when we were preparing for a presentation that outlined, I think, 5 different task forces or committees that have been assigned to review and revise the annual program fund since 1977. So that was interesting that it has been going back for so long, and often coming to a similar recommendation, looking at a different way, not a per member way of calculating it. We also recognize that contributions have been declining steadily over the past 10 years. So with less resources coming in, and membership in congregation is also declining or shifting as we explore different ways members engage. But with declining membership and declining income, we know that something has to change in the long run for us to have a sustainable UUA and be asking a sustainable amount. We haven't increased the APF ask in 3 years. Typically, we would increase it every 2 years, about $2. It's held steady so we could prep for this. And then the other reason is because we are moving to regionalization. Your region, the southern region is there. New England is mostly there. You guys are there. Mid-America and Pacific Western are in different places. The Mid-America staff has been regionalized the longest, actually. But regionalization has also changed how your staff is paid, how the Central East region staff is paid. We are now direct colleagues. I'm in Boston, but I am part of the team that supports the Central East region, and David and Hope are part of the team that is the UUA. And so finding a different way to express that through how we ask is part of the goal here. Oh yeah, okay, so here's my fun. Leaders have been asking for a new model since 1977, and this was a quote from the 1977 report that stood out to the APF task force, which was appointed by the board and includes the current financial advisor of the UUA, Lucia Santini Field, the former financial advisor for the UUA, Larry Ladd, who was the acting financial advisor when that started. And actually we hired as a consultant Dan Brody, who was the financial advisor before Larry, as well as we have a treasurer from a congregation in New England. We had some UUA staff and also ministers from different parts of the country. But the quote from 1977 that stood out as still relevant is, "UUs like to stress congregational polity, but forget the concept of covenant. This makes us a half church, one with generous freedoms, but weak commitments." And part of the reason why you'll hear us talk about covenanting in this process is really looking at what that commitment is from our congregations to one another. I mean, if anybody wants to see that document, it's kind of a hoot, but that might be because I spent a lot of time looking at this. So you can always email me. Again, why are we looking at a new APF? Here is a graph that shows the total amount asked over from 2006 to 2016 and the percentage contributed. And I'll tell you that the percentage contributed, again, was the same in 2017. We also had 72% of the amount requested. That's a pretty sharp decline. We know that in 2008, 2009, the economy took a hit, but we also know that in a lot of places the economy has bounced back, and that's not reflected in these numbers.
From crossing the border.
On
February 8th, 1971.
So if someone could mute, we have a sound in the background on February 8th, 2001, some video or something.
Jungle bases to cut off the Ho Chi Minh.
1 second, let me see if I can figure out who it is.
The Americans could only provide air support.
That is strange.
Nixon and his national security.
If somebody is watching something on Vietnam, if you could mute, please.
Yeah, who's watching Ken Burns right now?
Saigon, and proved to Hanoi and the American public that the
Okay, I'm gonna try to, is it okay if I try to talk over it for a minute?
Go ahead. I don't know where it's coming from.
would work.
Okay, so as I mentioned, besides the fact that income's declining, membership is changing and declining. I don't know that's held out for other people's congregations, but it's not uncommon for membership to be a little bit older and continuing to decline in some places, not everywhere.
There was only one route. The
So that, going on there. Oh.
Harry Way, who had been fighting the communists.
I'm working on trying to figure out the problem. We did mute everyone, and somehow we still have it.
I know my daughter's not watching it. I do see something in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the issue is that we have some people that are on the phone, and this is apparently coming in through a phone. So 1 second.
If something happened to me, please take care of my wife.
Norrie, if you could make me the host again. I'm going to reclaim the host for a second.
Take it back.
Yep.
The invasion was a failure.
Once again, everybody, I apologize for this. I've not had this happen before. Once again, if everybody could mute.
David, I think it might be Steve Gold.
Yeah, I think so. I think we got it. All right, thank you. And you are now the host again. Or you will be in a second. Thank you. We have fixed that problem. Yay, thank you. Good team. Okay, go ahead, Norrie.
I will unmute. Okay, so again, going over a little bit of this, why are we exploring this? We have a regionalization happening. As districts are moving to regions, funding is becoming a point of focus. We have been trying to solve a couple of issues with some of the staff consolidation. So in last year, when congregations sent a contribution in your region, they sent a contribution to the region. And it went Christina Sanchez did all of that invoicing. This year, it's coming to the UUA. And what that means is that we're managing all the data tracking, the statements, and that information. So it takes a little bit of pressure off of the staff in the regions. In some places, each district had, in most places, each district had its own admin, and there was a lot of duplicated processes or interesting processes. And so one thing to do was to centralize that a little bit. Again, a unified ask really demonstrates that we are all the UUA, and helps underscore that. So this is just a slide that shows kind of the disparity in the region, the disparity right now and how congregations are asked to contribute. In the southern region, they're asked to contribute 7% of operating expenditures. In New England, 3 of the 4 districts have, you might notice, a really low ask of $19 per member. Mid-America is $25 per member, and then Pacific Western is all different. So this was part of what, I'm sorry, one moment. Thank you. Okay, so just a little understanding of how different all of the ways that we fund our districts, regions, and association play out across the country. Okay, so this is getting into the what next. We are moving towards rolling out the new APF in the Central East region starting in our fiscal year 2019. So just to clarify, we have started our fiscal year 2018. That started July 1. It will conclude June 30th of 2018, and then we will move to our fiscal year 2019. New England will also be doing this in the southern region. Mid-America may well be, that's a little bit unclear, and Pacific Western hasn't done any of the consolidating pieces. They still function as 4 separate districts, so we're going to do with them what we did with your region this year, next year, so to have a combined ask based on historical district requests. But you're not here to find out about the timing. You want to know what the new APF is going to be, I bet. So here is the basics. We have an incredible spreadsheet that calculated everything under the sun, including historical giving to the districts for your region, by congregation, APF participation. And so the basic formula is 6.75% of operating expenditures. And I will walk through operating expenditures in a minute, and we will have plenty of time for you to ask me questions about that throughout the next few months. In the southern region, we found that it did not go swimmingly when we asked everybody for 7%. And one of the things that was very clear is that, and I know it's the case in your region, there are some very different costs of living factors in different parts of our country and in each region and in each, even in many states. The old formula made no exceptions whatsoever for where you lived or anything like that, and simply said 7% of what you spend to operate your congregation each year. That was not great. And that was a good takeaway, that we recognized that the new APF had to be responsive and reflect that. So what we did, we had an existing mechanism. Congregations are asked to pay their staff based on fair compensation guidelines. And it uses a geo-index rate. And so what the new formula calculates is it makes the formula will automatically adjust the ask of your congregation downward. So it might be less than 6.75% if you are in a geo-index area that's high. And I believe it's I can't remember if it's the 5, 6, 7, the highest 3 or what that point is. And I can definitely, we'll have that. That will be clear. The other thing we knew is that some congregations spend a lot of money. And that became very clear when we had when we rolled out gift, and people said, well, you know, we've been staffing for growth. We have a lot of kids. We have a lot more staff because we have a large RE program. We have a historic building that we are the caretakers of. So there are a number of reasons why a congregation might spend a lot more than another congregation. And we had our APF task force reach out to those congregations that we recognized had that going on. We needed some point to measure that. And so what Dan Brody, who crafted the formula, did was he looked at the expense per member ratio for all of the congregations. And we determined that congregations that are in that top 20% bracket of spending per member, we could have a tax form and have you fill out every little detail, or we could say, this group is high, and therefore we're going to adjust them down. So congregations who are in the top 20% of spending may see an ask of less than 6.75 if you did the flat math. I will note that you may see that, and you may be in a high geo-index area. We don't have coupon stacking, if you will. Whichever of those two discounts most benefits the congregation, so creates a lower ask, is what you'll be asked. So that's one important piece. The other important piece is that there is a collar for the first several years, then it will be phased in. And the collar is based on another key takeaway from the gift program, which is that it turns out that if you have congregations that are not giving as much as other congregations, and you change how you ask them to, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're suddenly going to be giving the same or more. Also, if if your congregation is suddenly asked to give a great deal less, typically you will go to that lower amount. The impact in the southern region was pretty profound when that happened. So a lot of congregations, that there was an assumption that if you got a big drop, but you'd been an honor congregation for a long time and you'd always been giving $10,000 and suddenly you're only asked to give 6, that you might keep it 10 or 5 or 8 or 9, but nope. And that makes a lot more sense in retrospect. But what we've done and what this means is that for the first few years, no congregation will see their ask go up by more than 10% in a fiscal year, and no congregation will see their ask go down by more than 10%. So that limits the burden on those that are getting an increased ask, and the benefit for those that will ultimately see a much more significant reduction. The only place that the cap is removed is for the southern region. They won't have a bottom because they've been giving it 7% already for quite some time. So just so you know, I know anecdotally, and I know actually that there are congregations in your region that have already done this math based on the 7% and said, oh, we're going to save so much. And so one thing I'll flag is that it's at that 10% per year. One of the other large pieces of the new APF is changing the definition of merit. So currently a congregation that gives 20% more this year than last year. I'm sorry, one moment. So hopefully you had a chance to read that for a second. I apologize. Juggling. Currently, if a congregation gives 20% more this year than last year, regardless of how close it is to their ask, we recognize them as an honor congregation. As a merit congregation. That could mean that your congregation is asked to give $20,000 a year. Last year you gave $500. This year you give $1,000, and we're recognizing you as merit. I don't want to discourage anybody in that position from going up at all. Please do. But we wanted to make merit more enticing, especially for those congregations that are historically not fully compliant with the annual program fund or with the district and regional asks. And so for FY18, if you give 20% more than last year, you are a merit congregation. For FY19, merit will be defined as congregations who increase their contributions to the APF by at least 0.5% of their operating expenditures over the prior year. That increase also will come with greater weight. So we're looking at different ways to incentivize and recognize merit, more than just the ribbon at GA. And it is a lovely ribbon, and it's one of my favorites to give out, but looking at ways to partner with regional staff to offer more benefits. And again, the same obviously with honor congregations. How do we better incentivize congregations to participate fully? Because in reality, we don't have many, I don't want to spend my time punishing congregations. That's not really what we're about. So if you have a great idea for an incentive for that might light a fire in your region or your district or your cluster or your congregation, please let me know. It's definitely a work in progress. Okay, I'm going to skip that one.
So if somebody said they would have to leave this meeting, we would greatly appreciate getting a copy of this presentation to show our board. We're recording this and we'll send the video out. And I will ask Norrie after the call whether she's willing to share a PDF version of the slide.
Yeah, I'll edit it a little bit so you got. So if you're leaving right now, this is what I want you to hear. What is the new APF? The new APF is a formula that calculates a single ask for support to be used for both the UUA and the region. The goal here is that the new APF is a formula that's sustainable. It's also responsive. So because it's based on expenditures, if your congregation lost a significant donor or had some big change in one fiscal year that required you to reduce staff, the next year, as your expenses go down, you'd see your request go down. And that isn't necessary, that unless a lot of people left your congregation, you wouldn't see your APF ask as it is now go down. So we wanted to create a way that was sustainable, not just for the UUA, but for our congregations, was responsive, and is relational. You can't calculate your ask straight out because it is in relation to your spending and all of the other congregation spending. And that's a new concept, and I know will also be challenging for some folks. So again, the new APF will emphasize that ours is a covenantal faith, and that's truly the heart of everything. I will be happy to answer questions if there are questions about certified expenditures or anything like that. But I will stop screen sharing now and listen and answer.
So Norrie, we have a question from Keith Goheen, who's a member of the JPD Board of Directors. He asks, if the merit congregation continues to give at the same superior level in year 2 or 3, do they continue to be identified as a merit congregation? So in other words, is it only you muted? So I will you have to unmute yourself. We're seeing the beginning of the beginning of the year. I'm going to reclaim the host that way I can unmute Norrie. Norrie's back. Yeah. So
okay, sorry.
If in year 2 or 3, they're giving at that same level, are they still a merit congregation if there's not an increase?
If they were giving so if they increased they went up by 0.5% of their certified expenditures in 2019. If they don't do that again in 2020, they would not maintain that merit status. And again, merit will be weighted differently than it currently is.
Yep.
But it's predicated on doing it each year. If a congregation did choose to keep going up and be honor, we have talked about what an uber merit congregation would look like. Please be the first ones to do that. I would so love it. But no, the idea will be much like, your merit status stays if you increase by 20% each year. And this will be 0.5% with the idea that for those that haven't already been able to move to the full new ask, that they'll continue to be incentivized and awarded.
So thank you. Are there any other questions for Norrie?
I see one about the geo index.
I didn't see that one. Thank you. Would you like to talk about that, or would you like me to?
Sure. It's to me directly. It's interesting because it says that the geo index is too high. That's going to work in your favor because the higher your geo index, the more likely it is that your ask will be reduced. It's baked into the formula based on what the district request or what the fair compensation guidelines ask. So there isn't a way to change that.
And if you have questions about your geo indice, you can reach out to your primary contact or reach out to the UUA Office of Church Staff Finance directly, and they can help you understand the process by which those geo indices are decided. So the question from Paul is the APF ask based on the geo index or on the amount that staff is paid? In other words, if you pay your staff well, do you have to pay more?
So this is it's so interesting. The reason why geo index is built into here is because we were trying to find a way to not discourage congregations to pay fair compensation. And so if you're paying your staff fairly, you will be asked to give a little more because if your expenditures are higher, unless you're saving dramatically somewhere else. Because of staff salaries and the assumption that ideally everyone is paying people fairly, but we know that's not the case. There was no, in crafting the formula, there was no way to get a list of who's fair compensation, which was very interesting to me because it's self-reported. And so getting a comprehensive list of which congregations already are fair compensation wasn't something we could do. So if you have more staff, you may be paying more. Again, two things are baked into the formula to adjust for that. One is expense per member ratio. So if your expense per member ratio is higher, it'll drop down, which could be much more likely if you have fewer members but are paying your staff well. Your per member spending is going to be higher. And I probably am not speaking about this as eloquently as I will in 2 or 3 months, but there was a big concern about not paying your staff appropriately and contributing to the association. And we know that's a choice congregations regularly have to make. So I also don't think this disappears that choice that has to happen sometimes.
Right. Thank you, Norrie. And I'll say that is this question is one that exists in the current system, and the new system, I think in some ways lessens it, but it doesn't take it away. Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely. Yep. And it's a work in progress. I see a question about operating expenditures. So I will touch on that briefly. And also, again, this information will be in a packet that will come to your congregation in mid-October. That packet will also include a sample of what your ask would be based on the FY17 numbers you reported, what your ask would look like if we were using that formula at that time. Lena is joining me briefly.
Hi, Lena.
Okay, so the certified expenditures are operating expenditures. We've actually been asking congregations to report operating expenditures since 2012. Unless you were in the southern region or a large congregation, and even the first year or two if you were in the southern region, that may not have been apparent. But operating expenditures are those regular expenses that it takes to run your congregation. We ask people to exclude two things. One are capital expenditures, and two are prior year contributions. So whatever you contributed to the UUA-CER this year or whenever, you'll exclude it. Because our congregations have vastly different fiscal years, there might be a norm in your region, but there is not a norm nationally. We ask congregations to report, and this has been happening in certification. So when you go in to log your certification, it asks you for these figures. What were your operating expenditures last year? What was your contribution to denominational? So that means APF and region. It does not mean other organizations that might be part of our denomination. So you would not exclude your UUSC contributions because that's a different organization. And we ask you on the certification form to list what your capital expenditures were. And those are taken out of the figure that we use to calculate this. I will be doing webinars on how to do that for your region. So if people need to walk through it, I did it repeatedly with the southern region, and we have a mechanism. So if the number gets reported because you have a new treasurer or the admin doesn't know that there's a new system or whoever's entering that data, we can help you change that if it needs to be changed. The challenges are around what is a capital expenditure. That would be your mortgage principal, not your mortgage interest. That would be, if your congregation is smaller and you bought a new copier, that's a pretty big expense. It's these outlier one-time expenses. The other piece I'll say about that is, I mentioned earlier, we don't define what a member is in your congregations. You tell us how many voting members you have. We give some guidelines, but I'm not an auditor. I am not going to check your books. And I'm not going to say, it seems like this isn't a capital expenditure. We trust you. We're in relationship. And much like membership, we will trust you to answer that the piece that can be more concrete. And I'm happy to talk with people and help work through that. We also have, I'm sorry, a little distracted. It's also Connie Goodbread, who's in our southern region, was very good about saying we this is about trust. So if you have, let's say you run a program that does a plate pass-through, so it might show up in your outcome, it's, we took this much in when we passed a plate and then we gave it to our local food pantry. I'm going to let you determine if that's part of your operating expenditures and include that or not, and trust that you will report the best number. Yesterday I got in a call with somebody who was like, well, can't people still game this system?
Sure.
I'm going to trust everybody. But one really great benefit of moving to this model that we saw in the southern region, and even for the pain of figuring out what operating expenditures are, and hopefully the resources I've put together will make it a lot easier than it was 3 years ago. They have a lot more members in the southern region, significantly more members. Young adults are members, people that may have been a bit marginalized because we aren't always our best selves and may have implied that if you sign the book, we have to pay more for you. this is an opportunity to grow out of that and to move hopefully from some scarcity to some more abundance. So there is information on the website now about how to calculate operating expenditures. That is the same process, and you can find that in the data services part of UUA.org. You can also find it if you go to UUA.org/amplify. It will bring you to the annual program fund resources and gift program resources. And I will give David that information tomorrow, and I can even include a PDF of that.
And also want to say, you know, this is the kind of question that we, your primary contacts, your UUA staff, field staff, that we're here to help you answer too. So, I mean, not only Norrie, and Norrie's doing this for the whole country, but know that your primary contacts can also help you to discern what's a good answer. And the reality is there is no system that isn't going to be gamed, right, by someone somewhere. But we're in relationship and want people to live to our best selves. The thing that I'm most excited about is what Norrie said there at the end, which is the idea that we can take the governor off membership, that we can be more inclusive as a movement, that we can let people define their relationships to our congregations in some different ways than they have in the past, and to give you all some creativity in being able to think about what does it mean to be in relationship to our congregation, and how can we best live our mission with that if this tax on membership isn't there. And the Southern Region experiment has proven that, has shown that part of the reason why Unitarian Universalism is not, I don't know, I think we're holding steady or shrinking very slowly, but compared to other religious traditions, we're doing amazing. I mean, my mainline colleagues look at me and wonder what miracle we figured out. And part of it is that we're being more creative with what it means to be a member, and with how people are in relationship to our congregations. So I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. It doesn't look like it. Norrie, thank you for being willing to come and please give your daughter a hug for all of us. There is it's a great joy that you've been able to be here, and I wanted to say this. You know, we in the Central East region have put some pressure on the stewardship and development team to move forward with this in the Central East region. Is that a fair thing for me to say? That we
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know that the various district boards have been anxious for this. I think as much as membership, the other piece is that it is reflexive to what's going on in your congregation in a way that APF wasn't or isn't. So.
Well, and I just want to thank you and the rest of Stewardship Development for listening to our district and regional leadership who've been asking to move forward with this for really about the last 3 years. And so seeing a timeline that includes us moving forward with it is an exciting thing. And I see Keith over there nodding his hands. So thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. So why don't we stay? I had another screen to be able to say what the question was, but I have a better idea. Why don't we just stay in this larger group like this, and invite people to, you know, take yourself off mute if you want to share. This is not just for the chat. You can type things in the chat if you'd rather do that than talk. But what the question we've been talking about is about how we are together as organization. Unitarian Universalism, the Unitarian Universalist Association, is the manifestation of our congregations being together. That we are not independent, we are interdependent. And so the question we sometimes see is that the UUA is one manifestation of that shared interdependence amongst our congregations, but it's not the only one. Our congregations, so I just want to ask the question of you all, how is your congregation in relationship with other congregations? Other UU congregations, and what has that meant for you? And this is popcorn, so whoever wants to unmute and share, you know, say your name, what congregation you're from, and share about how your congregation's in relationship with other UU congregations. Who's brave? I know there's some Delmarva Peninsula people on this call, and y'all got stuff to talk about, so.
This is Annie Simpson from Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston, Virginia.
Hello, Annie. Welcome.
Hi. I just wanted to share a nice thing that we do with BREW. BREW stands for Bull Run Unitarian Universalists in Manassas, Virginia. And in the season when we are all working really hard to celebrate our financial success and at the same time recruit additional donations, we have a tradition where we shift out the services of waitering, being the waiters and waitresses for the other church at the stewardship dinner.
Oh, how cool is that?
That's something we've done for several years, and I think it's a very nice touch that we help each other out.
So you all are each other's hosts and servers during your stewardship.
Servers. We do have our own staff that sets up the dinner and brings the food and does the main thing, but the serving and cleanup, we share.
Oh, how cool is that? Thank you, Annie. Who's got another thing they'd like to share?
Hi, I'm Katie Alberti from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of North Westchester, just outside of New York City. We're lucky enough to have 5 congregations in our county. I can get to 3 or 4 of them in 25 minutes of driving. And we've done a number of things together, and we're working intentionally to make more of it happen. We actually have started a once-a-month meeting of the ministers, the presidents, and the vice presidents of the congregations to start talking about ways to cooperate. Our congregation shares a director of religious education with one of the other congregations. In happenstance, and it worked out really well. They do our OWL program is shared. Our coming of age program has been shared. It just adds a lot of depth, and it allows a larger group of kids so they don't feel quite as exposed. Since our congregations, most of the congregations in the county, and there's 5 of us, are from about 120 on down, and we have one that's about 220. The most fun thing we did was all of our choirs got together and had a choir festival for 2 different years, and it was great fun. So we're working to do more stuff together.
Thank you, Katie. Who else is willing to share something, how your congregation's in relationship with other UU congregations?
Hi, this is Donna Shand from the UU Fellowship of Newark, Delaware.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, David. Our state advocacy network recently became a program of UUFN, and it's pronounced UDAN. It's spelled UUDAN, but we pronounce it UDAN. It's the UU Delaware Advocacy Network. There are 5 UU congregations in Delaware, and we're still doing some organizational stuff with UDAN, but we're going to be gearing up for doing some legislative ministry after the first of the year, and also working in combination not just with the 5 churches, but the 5 UU churches, but reaching out to other progressive groups in the state.
Thank you, Donna. Who else is willing to share about what your congregation is doing with other congregations?
Hi, this is Dick Hawkins from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And I think the biggest thing that has helped us is the cluster. We have a very active cluster on the Delmarva Peninsula, which consists of 7 or 8 churches. I'm not sure it's the exact number, that do joint things like joint retreats and things of that nature, but meet once a month to share ideas and to see if there's joint things that can be done. It's worked out pretty well for us. We're a small church.
And I'll share that you all meet both in person and by Zoom sometimes, so that you can.
Correct.
Yeah, because I know I'm your primary contact.
Yeah.
But yeah, and do things like I'm going to brag on y'all for a second. Not only do you share a shared church retreat every couple of years, but also the Beach Bash and the Pride Festival that you all do together, as long as training and everything. So wonderful, Dick. Thank you. Who else has got something they're willing to share about how your congregation is showing that interdependence with other Unitarian Universalist congregations? If I have to start calling on people, I will. I'm just kidding. Is there anyone else?
Well, this is Linda Sanders in Wilmington, Delaware.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. The 3 Delaware churches and the 5 nearby churches, we do a lot of things together. We share a lot of social justice work together. We have the Social Justice Connector that tries to link all of our different activities, and we attend each other's events quite a bit. So I'd say we're pretty well connected with our fellow UU churches. We're all within like about, I don't know how many miles, but close. We can within about 15 minutes of each other, so we can do a lot together.
Well, for the 3 Wilmington area congregations.
Right.
Yeah. So, and one of the things about Delaware that's a little interesting is that a lot of the congregations have support from First Unitarian Wilmington in their history as part of how they became a UU congregation, how they were founded. So who else? Somebody. I love our Delaware people, but somebody not from Delaware. Anybody willing to share? Is that you, Paul?
Yeah, this is Paul Atelsik from Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Fairfax. We're sharing some costs with some neighboring congregations on supporting an immigrant family in an apartment, and helping them with getting a job. And
yeah, and that's an amazing project that you all have embarked on, to be able to do that sanctuary project, and it's been really transformative for the congregations. Is what I have heard. So is anyone else willing to share? If not, I will go ahead and move us to closing.
Well, I'll just mention one more thing. Peace Week Delaware now is its 2nd year, and was sponsored by a lot of the UU churches and some of the more liberal churches in Delaware.
Yes.
We had over 60 events statewide that were put on by our different organizations.
Amen, Linda. And I'm just going to say, for those of you who haven't figured it out, Unitarian Universalism is hopping all over Delaware. And I don't know what it is about this state, but there's just lots of UU energy happening in Delaware. So, so anyway, thank you all very much for coming tonight and being part of this. Once again, we recorded this. It takes usually about 12 hours to process and get it up on the web, so probably sometime tomorrow morning. We have our next month will be October 25th. I will not be hosting that night. I have a need to be with a congregational board somewhere, so the Reverend Megan Foley, our regional lead, will be hosting that night. And we're still tracking who's going to be the presenter, but that will go out at least a week or so prior what the presentation is. I'm trying to get another person from UUA headquarters in Boston, but we'll see. But Megan Foley will be hosting, and once again, we do this every 4th Wednesday of every month from September to June. With one exception, we don't tend to do it at the end of December for obvious reasons. But beyond that, every 4th Wednesday, you can go ahead and mark it in your calendar. And I look forward to seeing you all here again. And thank you all very much for our closing words tonight and extinguishing our virtual chalice. I bring you these words once again from our hymnal, number 680. These were spoken by the minister who was my internship supervisor in Evanston, Illinois, many years ago. So I've chosen them in part in a bit of homage to the Reverend Barbara Peskin. She said this: "Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery." Go forth, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care.